My topic is the next 10 years. I will try to sort of give you a summary of what's happening. Two very big waves that are impacting everything. One is climate change. Good news there is we can solve it. It's actually a business now. So going green is now becoming the biggest change since the industrial economy. 100 years ago or so ago, we were moving into the fossil fuel economy, and that grew like crazy. And now we have to sort of put up with the consequences. But we can solve this. We're actually making breakthrough innovations every week, for example, in battery technology and recycling. And it's mind-boggling, truly mind-boggling. The World Economic Forum says 100 million new jobs in the green economy. Right? Every investor in the world, the number one thing they want to do is to invest in climate technology, apart from, of course, artificial intelligence. But climate technology means, for example, climate sequestration, different kinds of concrete, new ways to recycle, new material sciences, and huge list. Most investors are saying now the next sort of 100 what's called unicorns, $1 billion companies, they will either be in AI, which they are now, but mostly in climate technology. All the money is going there. So there are lots of issues about this, as of course the fossil fuel economy, the old economy, is making roughly $2 billion US profit every single day. Okay. Now that carries a lot of weight, politics and otherwise. It's just a huge amount of money. And when you go to COP meetings, the summit meetings, you'll see 1,000 delegates from Saudi Arabia and the UAE coming to influence decision-making. So those countries, of course, are playing both sides of the fence. On the one hand, they're investing in green energy, and on the other side, they're trying to delay the change as long as possible. One thing is for sure, the end of oil is coming. The end of coal is pretty much here. This is, of course, a global issue. But great hope here that we can actually do this. Personally, I think we're going to go through a period of quite a bit of stress and confusion. Well, we may end up at roughly 2.5 degree global warming, but then we have means to sort of go backwards. That's the optimistic view. But it is painful, but it creates new workplaces. So that's actually a pretty good scenario for the future. Artificial intelligence, machines that can think, parenthesis. Of course, they don't think like we do, but machines are no longer stupid. This is a very big deal because so far computers have been pretty stupid. In other words, try to speak to your computer, good luck, right? It's still, it's working now in mainstream English, but like my own name, I will not understand, like GERD, that's gastrointestinal reflux disease in English, right? No, that's not, that's just a German name, right? These machines are now basically on the destination of saying by 2030, these machines will have the capacity of all human brains, all human brains. So that's processing, of course. Because, human brain is limited. We have limited space here. We have limited firing of the neurons. We're physically limited. A computer doesn't have any of those limitations. Computer brain, so to speak, can be as big as the whole campus here. Problem if we had the space. So that is basically something that's happening, which means that computers and machines, AI and robots, will take every angle that has to do with routines. That can be done by a machine will be done by a machine, pretty much. Today, for example, if you go to Japan, you go to the Toyota factory, the cars are pulling up in a bay and the robot is fixing the car. These are electric cars, of course. Sure. With the electric car, you just pull in, the robot comes up, pulls out the pieces, puts out the new software, does all of that completely automated. There's nobody working on the car themselves. Okay, it's a far cry from what we have with regular cars, of course. A car engine, electric engine has 25 parts, and a regular car has 2,000 parts. It's infinitely more complicated. So very big changes coming up in both of those directions. But when we look here, basically, the electric car, the idea of flying an airplane with sustainable airline fuel, sustainable devices, of course, and the whole circular economy. So the purpose of doing this is not to predict what's happening. That's very difficult. It's possible for some people, but difficult to be better prepared. That means being able to develop what I call foresight. Foresight means the faster you go, the further you have to look. So if you go in the US on the highway, you go maybe 60, 70 miles, you have to look ahead a certain way. But if you go to Germany on the highway, you go 200 kilometers an hour, 250, 300, you have to look further ahead the faster you go. So foresight is really important. And that means sort of anticipating what's happening. Example is Jeff Bezos, Amazon. He thought when the mobile phone came around, the smartphone and the iPhone, that people would be starting to read on their mobile devices. Okay. He called it the Kindle, of course. And then we went to the publisher and said, we're going to do this because it saves trees and shipping and it's a great business. And they said, no, we don't want to do this because we want people to buy the printed books. It makes more money. Right? Like the records make more money than Spotify. So that's anticipating what's happening. Henry Miller once said, one's destination is never a place, but a new way of seeing things. And a new way of seeing things is difficult when you are 20 years into the job. It's hard to see new things because you just repeat and improve. And so German car companies, 30,000 people in Germany worked on perfecting the diesel engine. Okay. Turns out there is no diesel engine in the future of the car. Unfortunate, because 30,000 people spent their time making a perfect one. One day the boss says, hey, wait a minute, it's all electric now. And, we have to be sustainable and green. So you see this scary pyramid here, the combustion engine cars, the majority of sales here. In the future, the cars are electric and most of the business is software. Cars have become, in fact, a software business. This morning I took a ride with a BYD, Chinese car, from the hotel here. It was actually pretty cool. It cost 1/3 of a BMW or Mercedes. And it's a whole new world there because all of a sudden the combustion engine car is toast, more or less. Of course, we're still going to have them. We have fancy Aston Martins and whatever we've got. They'll be around for a while. But nobody in their right mind will buy a car with a gas engine in 5 years. It's just, there's going to be penalties and you'll be able to go 2,000 miles with a car with a new battery. Fill up while you're waiting at the light to charge the battery. Basically, this is what's happening in many industries. So if you're in the pharma industry today, the future isn't going to be about selling pills. Pills don't heal anybody. Just make sure you don't die. This is not healthcare, it's called sick care. But you take the pill, you stay alive if you're lucky. Okay, that's already quite good. But now in the future, we're going to have healthcare using technology to anticipate the issues and fight them before they happen. To cure cancer, that's a long way away. But to prevent cancer, we can use with genetic engineering, which is a huge topic, of course. The car industry offers a good lesson. These cars are inefficient, they're disconnected, they're dumb, for the most part, not smart. And that can be an advantage, of course. The new cars are super efficient, hyper-connected, and smart. It's going to be the same with devices. Devices will be super efficient, they'll be all connected, the Internet of Things, as I call it, right? And they'll be smart. Potential disadvantage being smart means that people can see what you do with it. That's a whole other cup of tea than what we have today. Kevin Kelly, famous futurist who started Wired magazine, he says we should be optimistic. Now, I think this is an important message. Not because we have less problems, we have more problems. Wars, geopolitics, tyrants, autocrats. Not getting too far into politics here, but we have a lot of problems. However, we have more capacity to solve them. Practical problems. We can't solve Putin, Hamas, Palestine with technology. Obviously not, but we can solve many other things with technology. Disease, climate, pollution, waste. All these things can be solved using technology and, of course, policy. Right? That's what it comes down to. We can clearly see a lot of things happening that are basically science fiction becoming science fact. So we can't really fly on airplanes around the world using sustainable jet fuel. I mean, we can, but it's only less than 1% of the planes that use it. It's very hard to fly sustainably today. In 10 years, yes, but probably short distances. rather than going to Tokyo. I'll give you some statistics on this. Capacity to solve. Transition to the green economy actually makes money. It costs money now, but it generates new jobs, generates new money, generates new stock markets. As many investors are saying, in 5 years, nobody will buy Aramco shares, Saudi Arabian oil company, because they're at the end of their lifespan, unless they figure out how to go green, which they're trying to. Everybody will invest in different things. I'll show you the list in a second. But yes, right now it's painful because we're talking about carbon tax. Likes taxes. I live in Switzerland. We pay taxes, but nobody likes taxes. First politician that says they're going to have more taxes on stuff like meat wouldn't be elected by most people because it's not a good message. Yeah? How do we solve this problem? It's an interim problem, but it's still very much a problem. However, you see here that transition costs, climate damage avoided, and so on is actually a much bigger business than we have anticipated. This is why a lot of investors are saying, okay, feels hard now, but we'll make lots of money in the future. That's a good argument for this. We have this chart showing the race to build commercial fusion reactors, nuclear fusion. Billions are going to this. Nuclear fusion is the opposite of fission. Hard to do, but once you have it, then it basically is game over for energy issues. Cheap, reliable, clean nuclear energy. That's roughly 10, 15 years, not 50 years. We have that. We can table climate change as the #1 topic. We can go back and actually undo it. And we can travel to other planets and all of that stuff. But we're not sure when it will arrive. So right now we're in a jam because we don't have enough energy. We don't have nuclear fusion. You have solar batteries, and solar technology is now 99% cheaper than 14 years ago, replacing coal plants in India. All that stuff is a great success story. Makes it hard, of course, in countries where there is not much sun, but now we have ways of transporting energy. So all of these things are happening. This is the best chart. Yeah, this is really the solution. We have to decouple our growth, not just GDP, but growth in general, from emissions. So not growing is not really an alternative. That's the problem. We can always have sort of degrowth, maybe for, say, cruise ships or so. Yeah, it would make sense for that. But generally speaking, if we propose to go for a degrowth strategy, means having no kids, traveling less, eating vegetarian, not a very plausible strategy, really. So now we have to figure out how do we mix those two, some degrowth, but mostly growing without emissions. That's the key. Figures that out in every possible, whether it's appliances to transportation, it's their win. We see here that people are worried about artificial intelligence taking our work, and that is partly true. I'll explain in a second. But basically, all new technologies have led to more innovation in job markets in history. That may not be true this time, it's hard to say. But if you're looking at this, occupations that didn't exist, they go up a lot in professionals and managers based on new technologies coming in and offering new possibilities. Basically, if you work like a robot will take your job. Call center, not that they work like robots, all of them, but 21 million people. And you pick up the phone and you change your booking or so, that's a commodity, right? Robots can do that. AI can do that very soon. But many other jobs will be changed again because technology allows new jobs to happen, like social media. No matter what you think of social media, we have about 20 million people who work on social media now. It's not all a bad mix, but okay, that's the bottom line on the exponential increase. Our ability to collaborate, unfortunately, has not improved. We have technological improvement, which gets mind-boggling. The sky is the limit there. But are we collaborating to make it work? No, we use AI to build drones that kill people without human supervision. We have ways of fixing climate change, and we're doing pretty good here in Europe and the US. But in China and the rest of the world, what are we going to do about them? If they don't come along, then we have a problem. So we have to pay them, basically. So it's not going to be far away where we in Europe and in the UK have to pay a climate tax to get the guys in India and China and Africa to come along. If they don't, we can do whatever we want. It will not make a difference. It's a global issue. Trust in other people has declined around the world. The numbers are different. UK is a little bit more, for example, than say France or Italy or so. But you can see here trust in Brazil has dramatically declined. Only 7% of Brazilians trust other Brazilians that are not family. We see democracy declining on a global level. Of course, this is the year of elections, so there's a lot of change here in this chart. People living in autocracies have increased. And this is all stuff that comes back to the issue of collaboration and trust. We see here how much money we are spending on climate finance, military, that's growing like crazy right now. Fossil fuel subsidies, $6.5 trillion per year we spent on making it possible to drive cheaper. COVID, of course, that was a big exception. The average money we need is roughly about $9 trillion a year to fix climate change. The reality is we have all the science and the tech, but we're deciding the wrong thing. That's the bottom line on this. So once we have more emergencies, we're going to make a change in that decision, because the other thing that's happening with technology is that productivity is increasing, but salaries and basically what I call human factors are not increasing. Right? And that has to be tackled, because really what that means is that people owning technology, they get the top level of income and everybody else gets less. So basically the summary of what I call the good future is this. We have lots of technology that will help us, but we need a bit more than tools. We need telos, wisdom. We need to make the right policy decision. Because now we're entering in a world of exponential change. The next 10 years will bring more change than the previous 100 years. If you have kids, you got to think about that. What's happening now is with all these changes, it's not just artificial intelligence, it's also other stuff like quantum computing, genetic engineering, nuclear fusion, genome editing, and of course geoengineering, changing the weather. All that stuff is coming in the next 10 years. With all of this, it could be potentially solving most of our practical problems. Now, if we have quantum computing, we have unlimited computing, we can solve cancer. Well, we can analyze it and we can figure out how to prevent it. We can't cure it quite yet, but we understand it better. For example, 400 million people have diabetes. Can we use technology like AI to figure out exactly how diabetes is happening and how we can prevent it before it happens rather than just giving medication? We can do that all with these technologies. Those are all good things, right? So now we're going to use synthetic biology to build things in new ways. A great example from the construction business, we have roughly 40,000 kilos of concrete around the world for each person alive. And all of that concrete is non-recyclable. We can't use it again. So now we're inventing concrete that can be taken down and stuffed into a machine and used again. This is brand new. It's now being used in many ways, and we can use a 3D printer to print the wall or the house for that matter, and then we can tear it down and build another house, but it's 10x as expensive. So as a background to this, we have three simultaneous revolutions that are happening. The first one is the digital revolution, which is primarily about artificial intelligence. Now I'll talk about in a second. The sustainability revolution basically means if you're not sustainable, circular, green, by 2030, people will hate you. Already true. So if you talk to people who graduate from college, for example, lawyers, 80% of them will not take a job with a company that is anywhere close to the oil and gas sector. And nobody wants to work for those guys anymore. On the capital markets, they're still delivering good returns, which is what people like, but everybody's pulling their money out. It's a gradual thing, but it will explode. You're looking at stuff like Extinction Rebellion here in the UK. We're going to see this on a global level, X100. This is coming. Because as soon as we feel more climate change, like people dying in India and in Spain, which is, we thought was going to be 2070, but unfortunately it's 2040, and so on, there's going to be a lot of that pushback. Of course, they go together. I call this big blue and big green, because obviously we can use technology to solve climate change as well. But that will mean unprecedented measures on sustainability. Taxes, penalties, international agreement, emergency regulation, like COVID. You couldn't go out and we had to comply. Big story there, but that's going to be the same here. And we'll see new things happening there in terms of economic advantage. Germany will be net zero by 2030, and their economic advantage is huge because they have invested so much into this technology. The last revolution, is the purpose revolution. And that means people are asking for more purpose than just profit and growth. That's primarily the generation from 15 to 40 sort of time frame, who are saying we don't just want more money or more goods or more consumption, we want more purpose. People, planet, purpose, prosperity, sustainable development goals. And when the millennials, the Gen Y, between 25 and 40, when they come into power, they're going to change everything. So this is now delayed because of COVID. So it's a whole different ballgame then when they come in and take over in politics as well. So they're all happening at the same time. Number one thing here is really the mega challenge going from the emphasis on economy, profit and growth, to the emphasis on planet. This is now happening across the board. So now the stock markets are saying this can't be true. The most powerful company now is NVIDIA, the AI company, but the second one is Aramco, the Saudi Arabian oil company. These things are now starting to be obvious. And of course, yeah, there are reasons for all these things, but this change is happening now in a large way. And then this other one is the humans doing routine work, commodity work. Many of us do commodity work. The machines will do the commodity work. Machines means robots and software. That can be, again, heaven or hell, because if I can get the machine to do the monkey work, so to speak, like the financial check-in, the diligence, the translation, the summarizing, I can save a lot of time. I can be more productive. But then if I save time, will I just work more? Or will I end up working less for the same money? I mean, those are big issues that will happen here. People who are currently doing a lot of routine, India, Brazil, China, when you do a lot of routine, your job is on fire, basically, the question of time. But we see stories like the checkout in the supermarket that was supposed to be automated everywhere. And that is happening. You can go to Decathlon and have a machine check you out. But by and large, people are still doing the checkout, you know? And there's still people at the checkout. Or there's people supervising the machine checkout. It's not as simple as it looks in terms of routine. And, you know, will take a little bit longer. With all of that happening, we have 4 points in technology. Information technology, which is exploding, digital transformation. Digital government, for example, where UK is doing pretty good on that instant compared to other countries. But the gold standard is Estonia and Scandinavia and so on. Biotechnology, I'll explain in a second. Energy technology and artificial intelligence technology. And those are all solutions that we see pretty quickly happening. Here's an example of synthetic biology, which means materials that are originally from nature. So we use that, for example, to engineer pharma or beauty products. Now we can synthesize them. So these things are exploding, and that basically will solve hundreds of problems, including in electronics. Like what material we use, what kind of plastic we use, how we can recycle it. All of these things were like a no-go 10 years ago, and now they're becoming feasible. They're probably more expensive in the beginning, and that is always an issue. There'll be subsidies, but for example, replacing fuel with biofuel, that's only one of like 100 solutions for transportation. Clearly, if we can solve that problem, that's going to make a vast difference, given that we're all going to fly more no matter what. Give us some examples here. Engineering principles to develop new biological parts like spider silk. And these products are now basically fully printable. This is happening, for example, in equipment manufacturing, where now we can print them. So we have meat from the factory, cultured meat. It sounds terrible, but it's actually not that bad. I mean, these are animal cells, right? If you're vegetarian, that wouldn't qualify, but they're not from dead animals. Cultured meat basically means you can grow the cells in the lab. Then from the cells, you can make hamburgers or sausages, and it's protein. So biodegradable electronics. Big topic, not new, but finally workable. Sustainable manufacturing, utilizing bioengineered materials, new battery technologies that we can use, what's called bio batteries. So now we're already on the way of replacing regular lithium batteries with lead and other battery technology. Smart materials, self-healing materials, biofabrication is a long list. 5 to 8 years, a lot of these things will be normal. Like WhatsApp is now a way to make phone calls. So that's all actually very good stuff because it will help us to reach the goal of sustainability. So let's talk about that and what that means. Again, this is the mega challenge. Right? How do we switch the priority? I think in the UK, we are now switching to that priority, hopefully. You can see that discussion raging in all countries. Brazil, where I work a lot, Lula, he is now battling the oil industry that wants to give him $250 billion per year to exploit oil off the coast of Brazil. And he needs the money. So now he has to make a choice. This is a very difficult decision because Brazil needs the money. But he's an environmentalist. Those decisions are now happening everywhere. You see this chart, this is very encouraging. You see all the stuff that we need to invent, carbon capture, alternative packaging, the smart grid, climate technology, battery storage, they're all growing super fast. So it creates new jobs and all in the next 10 years, not 20 years. So when you print this out, you can take a look at this. But basically, green is the new digital. That's why I think the sector and, of course, the UK, along with the rest of Europe, everybody's banking on this to happen because we can't be the leader in digital. That's obviously the US and China. And yeah, we are contributing, but we're not leading AI in Europe. The US invests more money than all of the other countries combined in the world every year. So it's hard to compete with that. The UK has, of course, a symbiotic relationship with that, but in Europe, that's the agenda. So green is the new digital, and this is why recycling is going to be such a big deal. We're going to see climate emergency defaults. Climate emergency is basically now. We're going to see that coming to fruition every year where it gets hotter. We have more storms, we have more migrants. Migration is a big issue. We are anticipating 100 million people migrating north because all of Northern Africa and the region around India is getting too hot. Hard to live, literally too hot to live. So if you fly a lot, you're going to have to pay climate tax, not voluntarily. And it may actually start to be climate tax, but to actually tax progressively. So if you're on circle like I am, top level, because I fly for 20 years now, 100 times a year, I'm the worst offender. I offset everything voluntarily, but that isn't the point. The point is that we have to find a standard. If you fly 100 times a year, then the 100th flights would be 1,000 quid to offset the tax. Because assuming if you fly 100 times a year, you can probably afford it. This is a very obvious logic. A personal carbon allowance, it's coming. We're going to have a passport that says my carbon allowance is maxed out because I have 2 cars and 2 houses and I use the air conditioner a lot, then I have to pay extra to fly. Sounds very anti-democratic in many ways. But emergency is emergency. Right? Something has to give here. And in Denmark, eat meat. You pay an extra tax. Global carbon tax may be coming. I think this may actually be a good thing because when it comes, like we had the tax when in Germany, when East Germany came back to the West, we had to pay an extra solidarity tax, it was called. Right? And that money was used to rebuild East Germany and to bring it back into a larger community. And that created hundreds of thousands of new jobs and opportunities. It's going to be the same here. So I wouldn't be against a carbon tax, say 2% emergency tax, to raise the money, to put that into interesting ventures and to enable recycling and less pollution and to save ourselves for a while, not forever, obviously. Emerging economies are creating all the new CO2. How are we going to get those guys to come along? Not with good arguments. They know the argument, but you can't go to India and say, you stop growing because you're creating emissions. Yeah, good luck. We have to give them money to create energy in new ways. That's the only solution. And this is a discussion that's being had at the COP summit that we pay for them to come along. That's going to be a global argument. Many people say market forces are not enough to stop climate change, and that's quite clear. If we leave this to the open market, we're going to end up with 5-degree global warming, which means 1 million people dying every year. By 2070, we're talking about our kids here. So we see this happening. The richest 10%, that's us, of course. We are in the top 10%. So the richest 10% cause 50% of the total pollution. The top 2% cause another 80% of that 50%. So this is a problem that we have been generating, right? And looking at the logic of the progressive flyer tax, the more you fly, the more you pay. Now imagine a candidate putting this forth, whether they're conservative or not, or populist or whatever. This is a suicide mission, obviously. Something has to give here. We move into an economy that's going away from extraction, taking stuff out, to creation. And this, of course, is the digital economy, but creation means we're actually creating things rather than just taking out gas or oil or coal or data, for that matter, and using it. And now we're going to create business models, and that is possible in terms of technology. So that goes with this kind of idea of the circular economy. So you have to ask a question, how will you get people to come along to the circular economy? The answer is, of course, not by saying that they should because it's morally right. That's a good argument, but you need a bit more than that. So that means incentives, subsidies, penalties, taxes, and a narrative to why that's the right thing to do. And of course, a change in the stock market policy. Because right now you can do really bad things and make a lot of money on the stock market as far as climate is concerned. Like a lot of the mutual funds that your retirement fund is paying into investing our retirement money, a lot of their stock is traditional oil and gas and coal business. So when these things change, it'll be like a sort of a domino effect. I would say it's the end of business as usual. I think that's shocking to a lot of people, but on the other hand, when business as usual ends, then new business comes in and we can do things differently and it will increase overall growth and profit as well. As I said earlier, I think a little bit of degrowth is probably good, but are we going to stop flying because of emissions? Highly unlikely. We like to eat, we like to have kids, we like to fly, we like to do things. And yeah, we can limit. But on the other hand, that's probably not going to really solve the problem. So what we need is to decouple the growth from emissions. And that really only works when you have this paradigm, the full stack economics, people, planet, purpose, prosperity. It's not an agenda that goes with the old-fashioned isms, capitalism, socialism, communism, populism, or whatever. Right? It's essentially a growth agenda that we are now translating. And there are companies already doing this, like Unilever and IKEA and others, but the stock market has to come along. What it means for your business is many of the things that you do today will no longer be possible in that simple way. We have to invent things to anticipate that change in how we manufacture, in how we recycle, in how we collaborate, and so on. The hardest thing is, of course, this, going from this paradigm to this paradigm. And again, it won't do any good if you do that by yourself because you get punished in the stock market. This is definitely the program for Europe and the UK. If you're looking at US investment strategy, that's also heading in this way. We don't know what's going to happen later this year, but this is the progressive strategy, I think. Al Gore, moving from simple capitalism to sustainable capitalism. I don't know if that's even possible, but that's even capitalism, we don't know. But we don't really need a name. It's just, it has to be sustainable. Otherwise, what's the point of having money, right? I mean, there's no point in having a great economy if you're going to die, if we don't solve these issues. And that's been made clear many times. Now we have the millennials. We're lucky here because there's more women, more minorities. They're coming into politics now. Look at Southern America. Well, lots of younger people are involved, at least in the second row of things, like in Argentina or in Brazil, and so on. And they have a different viewpoint, juggling different priorities. So give it about 5 years. Things may get worse in the next few years for many practical reasons. But then we have a new shift coming in. And we have to get ready for this. Money is shifting because people my age give their money to their kids. And they come into business and they do different things. So that's a very big shift coming up in roughly 5 years here. So we're shifting in this world from the ego economy to the ecosystem. I call this from ego to eco. And that is happening pretty much across the board, whether you're in the car business or the energy business. With artificial intelligence, it's really 3 pieces. The first one is intelligent assistance, IA. That's a much better word because it's basically smart software. A lot of AI that we use today is essentially smart software. So better maps, better email writing, better translation, better Slack, better practical stuff, really. So if you're a doctor, you can use AI to look up the latest research and it will read it to you while you're operating. That's a great help because no doctor can keep up with 6,000 case studies a month. That's a good tool, yeah, but it's not going to replace your decision making. It's just going to help you to find things better. Yeah. What it means, for example, is that in the office, you can finally use a software that knows where you are, who you're talking to, and how to track customers. Salesforce has a thing called Einstein, which allows you to follow up on leads and remind you of things, this kind of thing. And actually writes the emails for you if you want. Even that, I would say, probably not such a good idea. But, you know, it can do that. And then we have disruptive things like artificial intelligence, for example, that is used in robots to actually do things that humans used to do. And then we have the final thing that we really don't want, artificial general intelligence. And this is what OpenAI and Microsoft want to build, and many other companies. This is a machine that could do every cognitive job of a human better than a human. Every job, not just chess or driving, but all of them. So this would be a super intelligence. Sometimes I call this jokingly the alien intelligence, because it would be basically the alien that we've always talked about arriving, but that we create. I think most of the effort is here, be more productive, to be faster, a little bit here. As a definition, I think it's important to remember that Demis Hassabis from DeepMind, just around the corner from here, now owned by Google, he says AI is computer systems that turn information and data into knowledge. Okay, that should maybe worry us, but also excite us, because in a way, that's what we do. We create knowledge. We're knowledge workers. I mean, you're not factory workers. And if a computer can have knowledge, then we have two options. We could either say, okay, if you have knowledge, we do nothing. We just stand and watch, which is probably a bad idea. Or we use the knowledge to improve our knowledge. So bottom line, I think for most of us, is that a person using AI will beat the person not using AI. That's not always true, but AI by itself will not beat anything, except for chess. Very good at that. But for example, there's now about 250,000 books written by AI on Amazon Kindle. They're written by a machine according to certain plots that are repeated, and people buy them. But 98% of people who buy them afterwards, if they find out it was written by a machine, they want their money back. It's an interesting factoid that, okay, yes, you can have an AI, and you can have a robot to be your mate. It's possible. But, you know, is it going to be good? That's the question. However, artificial intelligence is now a general purpose technology. General purpose means like fire, like the printing press, like the internet. It's not going to go away. So basically, there'll be AI in every single product, from your car to home electronics to the refrigerator. And this will be the first time it will actually work in simple ways, like speaking to devices. The other thing that's happening is that we don't have to type to control a computer. Right, so we're going from the graphic interface, the browser apps, to the natural user interface. A lot of these devices that have AI, we speak to them like we speak to a person. And this could also be very strange. It's a cultural question whether we would like that. I don't like that idea, but I use it sometimes. But clearly, if you're, for example, in supply chain management, you can be like Tom Cruise in Minority Report. You pull out the data, you throw it over here, and you can work 100 times as fast that you probably don't want to miss. So there's kind of a give and take situation here. But look at how much money is going to this. OpenAI is now worth $86 billion. It's huge how much money. It's the biggest money raising ever. And there may be sort of an end to that bubble eventually, but the technology itself, AI, is not going to go the way of, say, the metaverse. So it means this, going from industry 1, 2, 3, 4.0, which is mobile, connected to industry 5.0, which is intelligent. Basically everything connected, everything about data you can make decisions on, analytics and so on, and all these things make you smarter and faster. And the bottom line of this, it's like what we call jokingly in futurism a cognifier. You stick in the old business and out comes the new business that's smart. And that's what's happening now. This is not rocket science, like it's not ex machina or something. It's basically just whatever was disconnected before and on paper and stuff is now digital and smart. There's 4 pieces to this: cognification, making things smart, understanding them; augmentation, which means I can use more information on iPads and graphic displays; and virtualization, so I can use virtuality, holograms, the Apple Vision Pro, to dive into information and finally automation. We call this cava, like the Spanish champagne. Yeah. That's easy to remember. So those are the components of what's happening in the industry as far as AI is concerned. And then, of course, automating things. If you can ever try the Apple Vision Pro, that's about 3,500 quid. You should try it. It's vastly expensive and it makes you a little bit dizzy and stuff, but this is really where things are going. So we dive into the computer itself, spatial computing. Imagine you would have that for supply chain management. That could make a very big difference. Imagine supply chain 2030 like this. We'll be the superheroes of Minority Report, so to speak. Using every possible data source, and you can make decisions on real-time information. Recycling, environmental control, all these things will be real-time in a map. I mean, actually real-time in a 3D environment, allowing us to make decisions better, move faster, making things much more transparent. Right? This will be our job, orchestrate this. Says Thomson Reuters, every professional will have our own AI assistant. Again, I don't know whether to laugh or to cry, if that's good news or not, because it would create a kind of a dependency. Having an AI assistant, like a real assistant that understands everything about you and does things for you, when that doesn't work anymore, then it's a problem. Then we become dependent on it. Bottom line is, with all of these things happening, human intelligence, machine intelligence, we have to remember these facts. Machines don't think. They do not think like we do, because emotions require existence. Machines don't exist, so they don't have emotions. They can fake emotions, of course. They're very good at that, like ChatGPT. Machines don't have hunches. Like for a machine to say, I think the following is true or not true, as you can see, very difficult. Because what is true or not true? It's even hard for us. It's a relative decision, and it's a choice that you make. Machines don't understand, they don't imagine, and they certainly don't care. So we have to keep that in mind when we use AI, that none of these things machines can do or should do. So when you do an employee interview, using interview, lots of companies are using that now. You sit in front of the screen and there's an AI interviewing you, monitoring your movement. To that, I would say that sounds like a good gimmick, but I'm not going to work for a company that screens me like this. It's dehumanizing. Generative AI is great because it allows us to create stuff as if you were an expert. This is a program called Sora. It's from OpenAI. It's not public yet, but you can make video clips by typing in a prompt. Show me sea animals on a bicycle. You can make a commercial. You can make a web page banner.
Greetings, I am Gerd Leonhard, public thinker and futurist, and this is my artificial intelligence avatar speaking on my behalf. No camera was used to record this. I don't know if this is amazing or just plain weird. What do you think? Χαιρετισμούς. Είμαι ο Gerd Leonhard και αυτό είναι το avatar της τεχνητής νοημοσύνης μου.
This avatar speaking Greek, but in any case, you can make videos with yourself like this. It's widely used in marketing, so you can send a marketing message to every new customer. The issue with all of that stuff, just to wrap up this chapter, is who's mission control? Who controls what's okay or not? I don't know. The king? The UN? On the business side, assisted intelligence, automation, we probably don't need a lot of regulation. But for the larger story of autonomous intelligence, we have to agree on who can use it. It's akin to weapons. In fact, it is a weapon. Right? But the good news is that to engage here is mandatory because it gives us a leg up by having a power tool. It's as simple as that. If you can have a power tool, you're going to want the power tool. You don't always want the power tool, but it's nice to have a powerful tool at your disposal. And this is now becoming the key question for the next couple of years. It's no longer about if or how we can do something, but why we do it and who's in charge. So bottom line of what's happening now is be prepared for this, especially if you have kids. Anything that's routine, that can be learned, that is understandable, has clear rules, the machines will do. This is why they're not very good drivers. We don't see a lot of autonomous cars around here. You see them in San Francisco or Phoenix, Arizona, or test places. Because it's actually not as routine as it looks to drive a car. ICE can fly the airplane now, no problem. But the reason that we don't do that is because we have other concerns about the pilot being there. So in principle, the pilot is a supervisor of the computer. But basically, that means hundreds of millions of jobs are under fire for the routine part. But AI will end the routine, not the job. It's important to remember. So if your job is 30% routine, If the AI comes and you can pass off the 30% routine, then you have more capacity for other things. That should be a good thing if there's some sort of incentive. But if your employer says, oh, you work 3 or 4 times as much now because of the AI, I can fire the other 3 people. So these are all associated issues. But I think generally speaking, we shouldn't be so worried about our jobs being impacted by being completely gone, but how they change is the question. And how we get ready. Like lawyers, for example, a lot of legal work can be done by machines. Due diligence. I mean, reading a 500-page PDF about the real estate situation in Miami, Florida, the machine can summarize that stuff for you in 14 minutes, not 14 hours. And that's a huge advantage. And then you have to, of course, know if you can trust the machine. So those are issues about liability and those kind of things. Our pyramid is changing. This is the pyramid of work. People used to work down here, knowledge work, and now the machines are taking over that piece. This is machine territory. Knowledge, information, not complex knowledge, not what's called tacit knowledge, quiet knowledge, understanding. Machines are not very good at that, but they certainly are good at information. And this will completely change our education, because why should we learn all these things and download information when this part is available here on my wristwatch? We're going to graduate to this sort of human level of work. That's where we are going. So it's up to us to figure out exactly the moral applications, the wisdom, the purpose, the tacit knowledge, the brain, all of these things that we do every day without thinking. And this is really where we're going. So beyond data, information, knowledge, and all these things. So what's happening with artificial intelligence? Look at it like this. Right? It's a power tool. If you ever worked as a carpenter, you can tell if you have a hammer and nails, you're making a building, it takes a while to hammer everything. But if you have a nail gun, you go, and job's done. Right? But a nail gun is very dangerous. You don't give it to your kids to play with. Artificial intelligence is like a nail gun. So we have to be careful where we shoot and how we use it. But the bottom line is this. The machine will replace those things that are robotic. And we all do pieces of robotic stuff. So we're moving to this world where our tacit knowledge becomes more important. Tacit knowledge that cannot be expressed, subjective, non-codified, difficult to transfer. That's our future. Going back to the other slide earlier, this part, the explicit knowledge, machines do that. And we will become more productive. This is really what's happening in the workspace. To summarize, we need a future mindset. I talk about the future mindset a lot. This is a radar operator from World War I. This is what we have to do. We have to hear things coming. Because the sooner we hear it, the more we can take action. We have to observe, right? We have to understand, we have to imagine, and then we have to take action. That's why I say every day we should spend, let's say, 45 minutes or so looking at the future. And I'm not talking about watching Netflix or so, or Black Mirror. I'm talking about reading stuff, being informed. Because then you make different decisions. You don't want to work on a diesel engine when there's no diesel engines allowed in 2 years.